Well, thanks for having me. Last Friday, I had lunch with one of the prominent politicians in South Africa, and he shared quite a lot of data about the government of national unity and what they are trying to achieve. And one data point really struck me was his insistence on the need that we have to make sure that the youth in Africa is taken care of. The reason he explained is that you have much more young people in Africa than you have in other continents. And the big difference with young people versus older people like me, I suppose, is that when they're unhappy, they can be very, very unhappy. And that can be very, very risky fast. So we've been discussing since this afternoon about financial inclusion and why it matters. And the point that really struck me during that lunch was this idea that, well, if we do not include people, we have a recipe for massive unrest, because young people in Africa, like everywhere else, want to be integrated in the system, in society. And if they can't participate, then they won't. Which leads me to this data point. Latest figures that have been given, it's on a portion. As you know, data is not entirely certain, but the portion is that there would be 1.5 billion people in Africa today, and that 900 million of those would not have access to financial inclusion. Now we can debate for hours, actually for days probably, about whether this figure is correct, not correct, or not. But then again, this is World Bank sourced, so I suppose it must have a significant seat of truth in it. Now, if you link this to this data, you find that there is probably a link between the fact that the situation for 50% of those 900 million has deteriorated over the last few years instead of increased. Now, figures only look figures, but we're in Europe here. 900 million, that's twice the population of the entire European continent, or one Europe plus one US put together. 50% of them, that's still an entire population of Europe that has their conditions going down. Now, if you compare that to the population of Europe, for instance, statistically, I think it's about 10 to 12% who see their situation going down. And that's from a much higher situation. So they are not at as much risk. Now, where does this affect standard, day-to-day activities? Well, the first place where it does is healthcare, of course, which is usually, when you look at what families care about, they will care about health, housing, education, security, and then financial, in that order. But if you look at it, if you don't get the fifth point, financial inclusion, involved, well then you're talking about 20% of people not having access to healthcare. You're talking, more importantly, as the continent where you have the highest mortality rate on the planet, for no good reasons, considering that it's also the continent where people are youngest. So by definition, they should be in natural better health, but they're not. And when they have an issue, they can't really fix it, and that's all related to financial inclusion. The same thing goes on education. When you look at it, 100 million kids do not have access to school today. Again, when you think about it, that's 1.5 times the entire size of Germany or the UK who cannot go to school. We're having huge national debates here in the UK when 5,000 kids can't go to school. We're talking almost 100 million people. And then, of course, it goes back in circle to the stability element, which is, it's well known that if you feel left aside, if you feel that there is no hope for you or your family, then you're probably not going to care as much as you would normally about the stability of the place where you operate, because by definition, if you have nothing to lose, you have nothing to lose. What I'm trying to imprint here is that for nearly 1 billion people on this planet, there is an absolute crucial need to get access to the financial system. Because without that, education, health, and overall stability cannot be solved, no matter how many conferences we do in a beautiful place like this one. How do we solve this? The first thing I think we do is that we take stock of what has been done. I mentioned before on the previous panel, I've worked in the mobile industry pretty much all my life. I think it's fair to say that, like many people, I joined the mobile industry because I was convinced we would be changing the world. And by all means, we have. All of you have one phone or more in their pocket compared to 25 years ago where nobody did. On the same vein, when you look at this chart, it's formidable. 489 million people in Africa nowadays have access to a mobile phone, compared to probably a fraction of that about 20 years ago. More importantly, 400 million people have now access to financial services, which is, again, fantastic. So that we are clear, I'm not criticizing at all. I'm just saying that we need to accelerate the pace. We need to do way more, because otherwise we have a massive problem in our hands, all of us. When you look at it, again, international data shows that 75% of the population in Africa still do not have access to internet access. Again, I'd like you to sink this in. We all see data. I've been the first one to believe that we were covering a lot and that everybody had access to internet, but they don't. That's just a reality, which is independent research shows that we have not yet cracked that problem. Second part, too bad the gentleman who was representing M-Coppa is not here anymore. I love M-Coppa, great product, allows you to lease your telephone when you can't afford your telephone, really a good idea. Unfortunately, very limited by balance sheet situations, which is somebody has to rent those telephones, and so somebody has to pay those telephones. Practically, 57% can't afford a mobile phone. That leads you to a situation where, unless something changes, this number of 900 million will not decrease. It will actually increase to 1.5 billion people who won't have access to financial inclusion in the next 30 years. So we need solutions that do not require connectivity or mobile phones. So essentially, we need to bring the price point of accessing to financial inclusion to something much, much, much cheaper, which is pretty much what I have at my wrist, which I'm testing, like my colleagues. It's called VeriPay. It's a Swiss invention. Has been brought so that you can connect, instead of needing one phone per financially included person, you can have a bracelet. It's much cheaper. So you can give one to your kids, you can give one to your wife, you can give one to your husband, you can give one to your parents. You can all manage of those via one mobile phone. And somebody just killed my slides. If you can put back my slides. I don't know why, yeah, back here, thank you. Yeah. So practically, when you want to pay, you just will zap this with my slide keeps changing on my screen. You basically just zap this as an NFC field, and you can automatically pay. On top of that, when you do this, you can access to the name of your kids, you can basically put identity, you can build profiles. So over time, you can build citizens who are part of the financial ecosystem at a fraction of the cost of what it would cost you to have that with a mobile phone. Social aid is a perfect use case. I know that I need to rush, so I'm going to rush. As you know, about 250 million people get access to social aid. That's dozens of programs, billions of dollars being spent. Big success in Malawi, in Kenya, in Burundi, in Zambia. You have, dozens of % of people who automatically get access to funding they would normally not have. However, once you're done looking at this, you look at the challenges that it has. A lot of it is still done in cash. A lot of it still requires cars or trucks or young people carrying suitcases of cash to basically be able to do things. Again, if you could decide that you did this via bracelets, you could imagine to give, I don't know, one telephone in a refugee camp, for instance, or a displaced camp, and then with that you can control 1 million bracelets. And you can put money on those bracelets, you can decide what it can be spent on, you can decide where it can be spent on, when. You eliminate fraud, you eliminate the danger of transport. What I'm trying to point out, ladies and gentlemen, is this idea that it's not always by having these big, braggish programs that you are going to solve this massive problem. It's about small solutions that actually work very, very well. You can apply this to education. Kids can go to school, they can pay their transport. We're currently doing a pilot in 2 countries where people pay their transport with this. You can go to shop and of course buy your food. If you are in a refugee camp, you can have the strength of going to buy your food instead of receiving your food, which basically means that you're back part of the system. Again, just because you have a small bracelet on you, you can go to school, you can pay for whatever you have to pay at school with this, without the risk of carrying cash, which personally, the first day I saw this innovation, I just fell madly in love with it. So sorry to put it that way, but I just really think it's a brilliant solution. There are plenty of other brilliant solutions, so I'm not by all means telling you that this is the only one. But we need to handle these points one by one so that we bring these 900 million people into the financial service system. What can you do to help? I know the lady will soon shoot me. And the first thing you can do is, well, I've seen many of you have taken a photograph. Don't forget to share them. Great idea. More importantly, please share the message. We're not here to propose something that is against another solution or that is replacing another solution. It's about extension. It's about saying not everybody can afford a phone. Not everybody has connectivity. Not everybody has access to connectivity. Just make solutions that are cheap, capable of working even when you do not have a phone or connectivity, and then integrate those into your systems. There is no reason why you couldn't pay with a bracelet instead of paying with your phone. So just do it, I suppose. With that, if you have a social project in your country, if you have an education project in your country, if you have a pure financial project in your country, talk to us. We'd be delighted to see how we can help with our bracelets. Thank you very much for your time.